Here we are at Fullwell Recording Studio. We just took delivery of the brand new Neve 1073 DPX Dual Mic Pre Equalizer. We just got it installed up in the rack upstairs and we're kind of dying to hear what it sounds like, so let's go check it out. So here we are in the control room. Originally I had intended on showing you guys the back panel of the unit, but when we got it out of the box we got really excited and we wanted to hear it, so we just stuck it in the rack and hooked it all up. And so instead I'll just tell you what's on the back. Both channels have an XLR input for microphone, an XLR input for line level, so you can send your Pro Tools rig back through the unit and sweeten up some tracks. There is a TRS send and return on both channels, so you can put a compressor or whatever you like in between the mic pre and the EQ or post EQ, depending on how you set the switches here on the front panel. And then there is the XLR outputs that feed back to your system. The Neve 1073 DPX front panel has some awesome stuff that you don't find on the original vintage versions. The first switch you see here is labeled front, which switches between the front panel XLR jack and the rear panel jacks. The next switch down here is digital, and that switches between the stock analog outputs and the optional digital I/O card, which can be purchased separately. The next thing you see over here is the XLR jack for the front panel, which is actually an XLR TRS combination jack, followed by the 48-volt phantom power for both channels, which works on both the front jacks and the rear jacks. The next switch you see here is labeled low Z, which switches between high Z and low Z input. The next switch over here is lift, which is a ground lift, so that you can lift the ground if you have a hum problem or something coming from one of the channels. You can lift the ground on the unit and see if that fixes it. The next switch you have over here is a 20 dB pad for those hot inputs. And the next thing you see here is something that definitely is not on the old units, which is a direct input right on the front side of the unit for a straight-in guitar or keyboard or whatever. When you insert a cable into that input, it bypasses the rest of the unit and automatically just defaults to that jack. The big red knob here is that famous Neve gain knob that everybody wants to touch, followed by the high frequency shelf. The EQ on this thing, I should note, is reversed from what everybody's used to. You're used to seeing low on the left like this one, mids, highs, or even on this one, low, mids, and highs. But on this unit here, it's actually highs, mids, lows, and then the high pass filter, or the low cut, however you like to see it. So you have your highs, your mids, your low shelf. Actually, we'll note that that's a high shelf, mid bell, low shelf, and then a high pass filter, all selectable frequencies except the high, which is set at 12 kilohertz. The next set you have down here is you have your polarity switch or your phase inversion, however you like to say it, followed by your EQ button. This button here switches the EQ circuit in and out. You have an insert button which turns on and off the rear panel TRS inserts. So you can have your compressor or whatever in line with the thing. You can switch it in and out, monitor it with it, without it. The next button you see down here is pre, which switches that insert to be pre-EQ or post-EQ. You could, by leaving the button out, it's post-EQ, so your compressor or whatever you have inserted would follow the equalizer. By switching the button in, your compressor would be inserted right here between the gain and the EQ circuit. So followed by that, we have this really cool stuff, which is definitely not on any of the vintage Neves, would be the output level control right here, which is switchable. You can push the button in, and it gives your meters, your LED meters here, will be selectable for the input section. If you hit it again, you can see the metering section for the EQ section, and if you hit it again, you can see the metering for the output section. That is a fantastic feature. Followed by the fader right here, which is a beautiful feeling knob. Great, great, great thing. And this is something you definitely don't have on the vintage units, which would be this headphone amp here, which is another selectable thing. You can switch between 1, 1 and 2, or 2. So if you set it to this one, you can monitor just channel 1. If you set it to the one that says 1 and 2, you can monitor channels 1 and 2 together. And if you set it to 2, it's monitoring just 2. And I'll mention that is a fantastic sounding headphone amp. So that's the front panel of the units. Let's get a little deeper into this equalizer. The equalizer controls on the front panel of the 1073 DPX are pretty much faithful to the original vintage versions, except for the fact that these are laid out horizontally instead of vertically. The first knob you see here is the gain knob. It has an off detent right here. When you go counterclockwise from the off detent, it engages the line level XLR jack located on the rear of the unit. The further you turn it counterclockwise, the more the gain increases on that particular jack. From that same off detent, if you turn it clockwise, it engages the microphone XLR jacks on the unit, whether that be the front panel XLR jack or the rear panel jack, depends on whether you have that front panel button we talked about earlier depressed or not. The next knob you see here is the high frequency shelf. It's fixed at 12 kilohertz. When the knob is aiming straight down, that's flat. If you turn it counterclockwise, it's a cut. If you turn it clockwise, it's a boost. The very next knob you see here is the mid band. It is a bell curve, and it has the same sort of settings. Straight down is flat, counterclockwise is a cut, clockwise is a boost. It has some fixed frequencies located on it. The first position is obviously off. The second position is 360 hertz, 700 hertz, 1.6K, 3.2K, 4.8K, and 7.2K. So some pretty nice usable frequencies there. The very next knob you see here is the low shelf. It has 4 fixed frequencies, 35 hertz right here, 60 hertz, 110 hertz, and 220 hertz. And the very last knob you see is the high pass filter, which has 4 selectable frequencies, 50 hertz, 80 hertz, 160 hertz, and 300 hertz. Well, let's hear this baby in action. So for this test, we're going to send some signal through this 1974 Marshall JMP right here into this Mesa cab with Celestion Vintage 30s, using a Sennheiser 421 down here into channel 1 and a Peluso R-14 Ribbon into channel 2. And we're going to get some cool lead tones and see how this Neve 1073 sounds. So we checked out the Marshall Plexi downstairs, and I mic'd it up with a Sennheiser 421 and a Peluso R-14 Ribbon. We're sending the Sennheiser 421 into channel 1 of the Neve 1073, and we're sending the Peluso Ribbon into channel 2 of the 1073. On the insert for channel 1, I'm running this Urei 1176 Silverface, and on the insert for channel 2, I'm running the Empirical Labs Distressor. So we're going to start with the Sennheiser 421, remove everything. So I like that. Let's hear the ribbon by itself. So here's the ribbon. Here's both of them together. So to sum it all up, the Neve 1073 DPX is an incredible unit. The thing is built like a tank. Sonically, to my ears, the thing sounds as good as any of the vintage Neve 1073 units that I've run in the past. I feel the addition of the XLR jack, the DI, and most definitely the front panel switchable insert make the unit really flexible where it can fit in any working environment. I give the thing 5 stars out of 5 stars, and I would highly recommend it to anyone who's looking to get that real classic Neve sound.